What's going on? Welcome in, guys. Farzin Vasugian here with you for a Tuesday edition of the Chiefs Zone podcast, the day after the Chiefs win over the Saints on Monday Night Football. And your Kansas City Chiefs, ladies and gentlemen, are 5-0 going into the bye week, undefeated, one of two undefeated teams, the only undefeated team in the AFC. The Chiefs right now playing great football. A lot of people got to like what they've been seeing so far from Kansas City, especially as the season's gone on. You're starting to see the offense get better and better, even though there's been some issues with availability and injuries. It has not been easy for Kansas City. The schedule has not been the easiest, and that's expected every year when you finish first place in a division. You're always going to play a first place type of schedule, and that's what the Chiefs have been playing. But it's just been even tougher because you're without the key guys that were supposed to be a huge part of your offense. Season-ending injuries. That's what's been going on for Kansas City. But Kansas City's always finding a way. They find a way to get through, and they've won 5 games. 5-0 to start the season. Welcome in, guys. I'm Farzin Vasugian. Appreciate you guys watching live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Big thanks to all of you guys tuning in, and if you're watching live, downloading, listening to the episode of the podcast. Always appreciate everyone taking time to watch the show or listen to it, however you're doing so. Always appreciate you guys making the podcast part of your morning, your afternoon, your nighttime. Always appreciate those who are helping the podcast grow, especially this year. The podcast has really grown a lot this year. So I've been asking you guys frequently this year to share the podcast streams, the podcast links, all of that stuff, the posts on social media. You guys have been doing that. And I know that because I don't pay too close attention to these numbers sometimes, but sometimes when you just log in, it's just right there in your face. And the numbers are up. They are way up. So thank you guys. I appreciate all of the work you guys have put in and sharing all of these. Means a lot, and everyone who's been calling in, commenting on these live streams, that means a lot as well. A lot of fun talking Chiefs football and NFL with you guys. Obviously, we'll talk about the Chiefs, the 5-0 start, and the obstacles they've had to go through to get to where they are right now. Again, has not been easy. There's also some news regarding a Chiefs fan that got a lot of attention last year. And no, I'm not talking about Chiefsaholic, not that Chiefs fan. We're talking about a different Chiefs fan. New update on this story that definitely needs to be discussed here. And I do want to react to the Jets firing Robert Saleh, the first NFL head coach fired in the 2024 NFL season. I got a lot of thoughts on that one right there, and I'm sure you guys might weigh in as well. I see you guys coming in here. Appreciate you guys commenting, watching along. Please be part of the discussion here. Don't be shy. Comment below whatever I'm talking about. Please feel free to react to it, and I'll get to the comments later on as the podcast goes on. All right, let's get into it here. The Chiefs, undefeated. They're perfect record-wise, but we all know it's been far from perfect. Look, I go back and watch every game again the day after, and I always like to give it a little bit of time because, you know, if you have an immediate opinion about something, that immediate reaction can sometimes be an overreaction, positive or negative. And so if you give it a little bit of time and go back and watch the game again, you'll maybe have a different perspective on things. That's just human nature. And then I'll watch it again when the All 22 comes out. When I went back and watched this Chiefs game again, I think in the moment it was frustrating because the Chiefs did leave points on the scoreboard last night. And the big one, of course, was the pass to Juju Smith-Schuster. A little bit off placement with Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to get to that in a moment here. But I think in general, like, the Chiefs just played great football offensively. They moved the football 460 yards of total offense. I mean, what more could Patrick Mahomes have done for you? Because the only thing I really got to nitpick with Patrick, and he's done that in some games this year, but I feel like he got better about it in this game Monday night against the Saints, was ball placement. Sometimes you see connections. I think a lot of casual fans will say, oh, well, that receiver touched it, he should have caught it. Well, that's not always true. Sometimes quarterbacks will throw the ball in a really bad place where they force a receiver to break stride and have to turn around, and that's not the easiest, and that allows defenders to come in and close in on ball carriers, or you overthrow, you underthrow a pass. That can never be easy here. But Patrick Mahomes, I felt like, was much better with his ball placement. Statistically speaking, this is by far his best game when it comes to completions and yards. Now, if you are just a box score guy and you don't watch these games, you're going to look at the box score and say, oh, he threw one pick and no touchdowns. Oh, no, he's up there when it comes to interception totals this season. But they're 5-0. They're 5-0. I think these Chiefs games, the offense does need to step it up. No one's shying away from that. But I do think the Chiefs are doing some good things on offense that a lot of other teams aren't doing. How many games have we had so far? 5. A couple of teams had their bye weeks in week 4. But for the most part here, the Chiefs are just one of very few teams that scored 21 plus points in their first 4 games. First 3 games. Obviously, it was only the 4 of the 5 undefeated teams, by the way, going into week 4. And now you look at 5 games into the season, the Chiefs have scored 21 or more in 4 of their 5 games. So, they're not lighting up the scoreboard like I think some of us might have expected in a game or two this year, but scored 27 against the Ravens, scored 26 against the Bengals, 22 against the Falcons, 17 against the Chargers, the low scoring game, of course. Hey, all things considered, Rashee Rice went out in that one, so I'll take that one on the road. Even though it doesn't feel like a road game, but I digress. And then you score 26 again for the second time this season. The Chiefs are finding ways to score points this season. And you look at the Bengals, and I know Bengals fans love stats. Suddenly they're not all about the wins. They're about the quarterback comparison. That's what they're all about right now. I guess that's what happens when you're literally last place in the AFC at the moment. The Bengals scored 25 points on the Chiefs. That's the most the Chiefs have allowed in a game this year. Second most, Baltimore at 20. And then the Falcons put up 17. Then the Saints put up 13. Should have been 14. And then the Chargers put 10 points on Kansas City. And that was during that 10-0 start where it was just a disaster first quarter for Kansas City. So that is Kansas City in a nutshell, and how they've looked in their game so far this year. And I brought this up a lot last night. I'm going to do it again tonight, and I'm going to do it a lot as the season goes on, as long as Kansas City continues to be consistent. This Chiefs team right now is playing without their top 2 wide receivers and their top 2 running backs. Hollywood Brown has yet to play a game this year, might not play. Rashee Rice is not expected to come back. Isaiah Pacheco, he will return, but he's supposed to be a big part of your team. And right now, thank goodness Kareem Hunt was available, because he's kind of picking up the slack and doing a lot of things similar to Isaiah Pacheco. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he has yet to play a game. I know a lot of people may not be on the CEH train, but considering how bad things were last year, CEH was one of the very, very few bright spots on your team last year. So I think some people kind of came around on CEH and believe that he's a good number 2 running back, and he might be expected to be a guy that helps carry the rushing load with Kareem Hunt in the near future. But when you look at this Chiefs team right now, without your top 2 wide receivers and your top 2 running backs, does the offense still need to improve? Yes. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs are not sitting around feeling bad for themselves and pouting and complaining. Oh man, we're without Hollywood. He was supposed to be a big part of our team. Rashee Rice made that giant jump from his rookie year to his second year. Dude was one of the best wide receivers prior to his injury. Isaiah Pacheco might not be considered a top 10 running back, but man, he's a huge part of this offense. You're without those guys, and you're still winning games. I mean, listen, as far as I'm concerned, Rashee Rice only played 5 snaps in that Chargers game. Essentially, he didn't play in that game. So you have 2 games in a row now where you've been without Hollywood, without Rice, and without Pacheco. And you're winning games. You're finding ways to win games. You can't do the whole, the referees and all that bullshit anymore. Like you just can't. At some point, you just have to accept the fact that opposing teams are not finding ways to get it done against Kansas City, especially when it comes to the wire here in some of these games. Lamar Jackson missing a wide open Zay Flowers and just can't get the ball to Isaiah Likely in a spot where he could have had it with both feet inbounds. Because he could have thrown it to him a little sooner, and that would have been an easier catch for Isaiah Likely against the Bengals, where it looked like they were going to win, and then Burrow fumbles, and then later on the final offensive snap of the game for the Bengals, Burrow gets sacked on the blitz there. And then against the Falcons, where they got off to a hot start. They completely dominated the Chiefs defense on the opening drive of the game. Patrick Mahomes throws a pick on the opening drive for the Chiefs. And ever since then, I mean, the Chiefs just turned it around, played much better football from that point forward against the Chargers. I kind of went over this one already, but I'll say it again since we're going in order here. 10-0 deficit in the first quarter. Chiefs never looked back, scored 17 unanswered points. Xavier Worthy stepped up. Kareem Hunt stepped up. Guys who, I mean, you got a rookie there, and then you got Kareem Hunt, who wasn't on your team for training camp. The guy's been on the team for a couple of weeks. Speaking of not being on the team during training camp, Juju Smith-Schuster was not with the Chiefs. He was let go by the Patriots. And you look at Juju and what he did in yesterday's game. I mean, that guy looked like Rashee Rice to an extent. 7 catches, 130 yards. What a game for Juju Smith-Schuster. One of the best pass catching performances this week in the NFL. So it was nice to see Juju go out there and be a big contributor. Because I said this yesterday during the pregame live chat. I think a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster needs to step up. And we haven't seen Juju play, in his Pro Bowl form like he was with Pittsburgh for quite some time. He was on his way doing that with Kansas City a couple of years ago, but then he had the concussion, missed a couple of games, wasn't really himself. And then you see Juju come back to Kansas City now after a really forgettable stint in New England. Man, look at New England's offense right now. They're not very good. Juju last night with his 130 yards has almost as many receiving yards as the best wide receiver the Patriots have. I mean, that's how big of a difference Juju made last night for the Chiefs offensively. That was by far the best offensive output we saw from Kansas City since week 1. I mean, week 1, the Chiefs offense looked great, and that's when you had Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. Now you're without Pacheco and Rice, obviously, but man, it just felt like the Chiefs, this was the most the offense had been in rhythm and in sync, and it just really looked like vintage Mahomes and Kelsey working together. By the way, I have it in front of me now. So their best wide receiver of the Patriots is Demario Douglas. He has 153 receiving yards on the season in 5 games. Juju Smith-Schuster he had 130 yards last night. What's his season total? 147 yards for Juju. That is 6 shy of New England's best wide receiver. And New England cut this guy way before the 53-man roster deadline. Way before that. So this whole situation right now with Kansas City, you're relying on guys who are familiar with the offense. They've played with Patrick Mahomes. They've played with Travis Kelce. They've played under Andy Reid. I don't think Matt Nagy was here. No, I'm sorry. Matt Nagy was here. Matt Nagy was here when Juju was here. So Matt Nagy does have familiarity with Juju and Kareem Hunt. Now, Kareem Hunt, he had been away for a longer period of time and at that point, it's like, okay, the offense can change a little bit, but not a whole lot. It's still a lot of the same things. Sure, they might do different things here and there. You can't be a broken record because teams will pick up on that, but it's still the same scheme is what I'm trying to get at here. And Kareem Hunt, he said in his press conference before the Chargers game, he said, I'm excited to go out there and shock the world and prove everyone that I still got it. Yeah, you still got it at 29 years old, which unfortunately is old in the NFL at that running back position. But Kareem Hunt's going out there playing at a very good level. And keep in mind, I know he was dealing with a shoulder injury last week in practice and was limited in a couple of practices. I think part of that is not being in football shape. I'm sure he's been in shape, but there's a difference between being in good physical shape and being in football shape. And, a guy like Juju, well, there wasn't really a lot of concerns with him because at least he had been going through OTAs and training camp with the New England Patriots. So he came to Kansas City a couple of weeks after getting cut, and it's like, okay, he just needs to get up to speed with what the expectations are, what the scheme is like, what update they've gone through over the last couple of years since he was in Kansas City. And boom, you go out there and he stepped up. He was huge for Kansas City Monday night. Right now, your two best receivers are Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster. Xavier Worthy, those training wheels are going to have to come off pretty quickly. And I think Xavier Worthy did some good things in this game. And forget about the touchdown on the trick play with Travis Kelce giving him the ball. Forget about that touchdown play. Because I think even though statistically Xavier Worthy did not have a big game last night, I think he did some things that really kind of helped throw off the Saints defense. Mahomes went to him down the field twice, interfered both times. A Saints defender interfered both times. First one was not called. Second one was called. And I think, in that situation, it's like, okay, you're already getting beat. So you just, want to take the L and not let him get the easy touchdown, at least make him work for it. And you're seeing Mahomes do more of that now. He did that last week against the Chargers, getting Xavier Worthy on that 54-yard touchdown run. Beautiful throw by Patrick Mahomes, something we had not seen in a long time since Tyreek Hill was in Kansas City. And he attempted that a couple of more times last night, getting the ball or trying to get the ball to Xavier down the field. Now, they weren't able to connect on a deep pass, but the attempts, the more you try these things, eventually you'll get it down to a T. You have to at some point. I trust that they'll do that. That's exactly what was expected of Xavier Worthy. I think the problem with Xavier Worthy is, like I said a minute ago, the trading wheels are coming up right now. Whereas before, the expectation was, okay, you got Hollywood Brown here, you got Rashee Rice here, and your slot receiver is Xavier Worthy. And, you can let him take his time kind of picking things up because there's no pressure. You also have Travis Kelce. And by the way, speaking of Travis Kelce, he's playing much better football the last couple of games. So even though Rashee Rice is out, no Hollywood Brown yet, and might not see him this year, I know there's some hope in the postseason. Listen, let's just assume he's not coming back because that's a possibility here. This is who you have. This offense looks very similar to last year. And I know there are a lot of people saying, well, you're not going to be able to win a championship like this. I don't disagree, except that is how the Chiefs won a championship last year. Now, keep in mind, last year, the issues with the wide receiver room, far different than this year. This year, you're dealing with injuries, and you're trying to go out there and see if there is a suitable replacement to bring in to help you. You brought back Juju Smith-Schuster already, but it kind of just feels like you need one more guy. Right now, you only have the Chiefs played with 5 wide receivers last night. Sky Moore was one of them. Okay, so 4 at that point. Okay, that was a little mean, but it's true. Come on. I'm not the only one who thinks that. This whole thing with the Chiefs offense right now, they won a championship last year, leading the NFL on drops by a wide margin. They had the most penalized offensive player, and they had the most penalized defensive player. And as far as the defense goes, last year, that was really the only bad thing was the penalties from L'Jarius Sneed. Now, I still wish the Chiefs find a way to keep L'Jarius Sneed. He's having a phenomenal season with the Titans. I read an article from the Nashville media that he's worth every dollar that the Titans spent on him, acquiring him from Kansas City. So that's not a surprise to me one bit. Doing some great things for Tennessee. But Jalen Watson's been good for Kansas City. And this is a guy that, had a lot of experience in his rookie season in 2022 because McDuffie got hurt and that forced him to play more. And, for a guy who was a 7th round pick, he really stepped up his rookie season. Didn't see much of him last year. Now we're seeing a lot more of him this year. Josh Williams has played a little bit. Najee Johnson playing a lot more now, trying to avoid injury, which is good. You're seeing more of him. Kansas City's defensive backs have been very good. Shamari Connor's been a great nickelback for Kansas City this season. Blitzing, cover-wise, a lot of really good things from Kansas City. When you look at last night's game with the New Orleans Saints, and let me just pull up that number real quickly here because I want to make sure I have the exact number here. So the New Orleans Saints had a total of 10 drives, and I believe that includes... Let me just double check. Does that include right before halftime? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that does include the drive right before halftime, which, all you really did was kick the ball and you went to halftime. So let's just say 9 drives, okay? Because that's what it really was, 9 drives. Of those 9 drives, Kansas City only allowed 2 touchdowns. And on those 2 touchdown drives, the defense did not look very good. Outside of the 2 touchdown drives, holding the Saints at 13 points. Keep in mind, they missed the PAT, so that's why it's not 14, it's 13. The Chiefs forced a 3-and-out 3 times. All of them in the first half. They also forced a turnover on down twice in the second half. So this is a Kansas City team that really looked good going out there and stepping up defensively like they always have. And that to me was a big difference maker. Look at Chris Jones here. Pro Football Focus came out with their stats. Chris Jones had 9 pressures in this game. There's a reason why this guy is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. Now, he may not have he didn't have a sack last night. His sack total might not be as high as some of the edge rushers in the NFL, but Chris Jones, man, the difference maker that he is as a defensive tackle, this is very rare. We're talking guys like Aaron Donald, Vince Wilfork, those types of interior defensive linemen who can really be a difference maker. This guy was a great 3-4 defensive end, and ever since the Chiefs switched to the 4-3 scheme under Spags when he came in to replace Bob Sutton, Chris Jones has been an even better football player as a defensive tackle. The things that he's doing, and they've lined him up in different spots as well. They don't just limit him right in the middle of that defensive line. And he's excelled in so many different spots here. 9 pressures from Chris Jones. And then you had the linebackers getting in there. Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, they each had a couple of pressures. Shamari Connor had that big pressure that forced a turnover on down. This Chiefs defense has been playing great. And I saw this on First Things First. Nick Wright put this up there on his show, talking about how the Chiefs have not surrendered they haven't surrendered more than 28 or more points, since Super Bowl 57, not the most recent Super Bowl, the Super Bowl before that. The Chiefs have gone 26 consecutive games, including the playoffs, without surrendering more than 27 points in a single game. And it's not like the Chiefs are going out there playing. I mean, this includes the playoffs here. This Chiefs defense, dynamite. Sound, stout, whatever challenge you want to throw at Kansas City, they're stepping up. Kansas City has faced a top 5 running back in terms of rushing yards 2 weeks in a row. They had J.K. Dobbins last week, who had the best yard per carry average in the NFL, shut him down. He did nothing last week against the Chiefs. What did Alvin Kamara do in this game against Kansas City? He may have had 1, maybe 2 good runs. That's it. Alvin Kamara was hardly talked about by Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. And whenever the announcers are not talking about a key player, that's when you know you're doing something right, especially at the running back position. I know offenses have, people are talking about last year and this year how offensive output not as good, especially in the passing game, and you're seeing teams run a little bit more. Well, the Chiefs are finding ways to adjust to that. And this Chiefs defense, they're standing up to some of the best running backs out there. I'm so used to this Chiefs defense, historically speaking, not being very good against the run. You guys remember Tiki Barber, what he did to Kansas City in a primetime game on a Saturday night several years ago? I think in 05. Man, I still have wounds remembering that game. This Chiefs defense, I mean, they've really, really come a long way. And I know we talked about Bob Sutton, but in the early years when Bob Sutton was here in Kansas City in 2013, 2014, this Chiefs defense was pretty good then. Unfortunately, they declined over time under Bob Sutton, and you bring in Spags, and he really finds a way to turn things around. And it hasn't always been perfect under Spags, but last year was the year that they kind of figured out the secret recipe. They figured out the secret sauce, and they know what's working now. And they do it better than anyone else in the NFL. There are some defenses that have tried to mimic the Chiefs defense. They can't do it the same way the Chiefs do it. Look at the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, the Ravens and Bengals game from this past Sunday. A lot of people are saying that might have been the best game in the NFL, which might be accurate. I would have to look this up, but is that not the most points scored in a game by both teams this year? I think it might be. I don't know that for a fact, and maybe that's already out there and I just missed it, but it would not surprise me if that's the case. Kansas City held both of those teams, Baltimore to 27 points and Cincinnati to 26 points. I mean, Kirk Cousins just went off last Thursday night against the Bucs. Didn't do that against Kansas City. So it's not like the Chiefs are going out there and playing worms. I mean, okay, I know the Bengals are 1-4, but they're offensively, they're definitely better than their record indicates. But your record is still who you are. I mean, whether people like that or not, they're 1-4 in the bottom of the AFC right now, whereas the Chiefs are complete opposite. But the Chiefs, they're not. Some of these good offensive teams out there, they're not able to light it up. The first couple of weeks, tight ends were just kicking Kansas City's ass. And now the defense has kind of figured it out, starting with Kyle Pitts. We're able to keep him quiet outside of one big catch. And now you're not seeing the Chiefs defense allow tight ends to do much. And I think Nick Bolton needed to adjust a little bit with his injury, his elbow injury. You still see the brace he's wearing. But man, this Chiefs defense, they're awesome. They're great. They really are. And I know there's the narrative out there that there are two people that are carrying Mahomes, the refs and the defense. Well, the ref thing is just funny. We've gone over it, obviously. I love it. I'm at the point now where I'm just like accepting it. I'm like, oh, Taylor Swift's here. Well, her Venmo just went through, Eras tickets, yeah, all that stuff given to the refs and their families. But the whole thing about the defense carrying Mahomes. Listen, Mahomes has not played horrible. I mean, yeah, his interception numbers might be a little high, but he's gotten better with his decision-making the past couple of games, I would say. Listen, Mahomes had a really bad start in 2021 where he was leading the NFL in interceptions, and they figured it out as the season went along. So Mahomes will figure it out 100%. If you think these 5 games are going to represent what Mahomes is going to look like the rest of the year, you obviously have not been paying attention. You just haven't. And I've got nothing else to say for you. I mean, this Chiefs offense is going to figure it out 100%. The drops are not an issue, although there was a crucial drop in the end zone last night. In general, they have not been an issue this year. So more times that's not going to be the case for Kansas City's offense. They're 5-0 going into the bye week. So the offense has not been up to par, and they're without some key players, and they're 5-0. They're 5-0. I mean, you can't take that away from Kansas City at this point. And going back to my point about the defense carrying Mahomes, I forgot to finish that point there. I keep bringing this up. Remember Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starting quarterback in 2018? Essentially his redshirt rookie season. That's why I always like to refer to it as his redshirt rookie season, where he threw for 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards passing. The defense was 31st in the NFL, second worst in the NFL in total yards allowed. And the Chiefs almost went to a Super Bowl with that unit. Mahomes was carrying that defense. So I have no problem with the defense, quote unquote, carrying Mahomes. As far as I'm concerned, I feel like all 5 of these wins have been solid team wins. They have not all been easy, but I think the defense has come through and have made plays in all of these games. I think the offense, again, not far from perfect, but they've also made big plays in key moments in all 5 of these games. So this Chiefs team, I think the balance still can improve, especially more from the offensive side. But once the offense gets going, and they will get going, everyone knows this, This is going to be a hard team to stop. I was listening to Kevin Wildes on First Things First, and I don't agree with him completely, but he said he's looking at Kansas City's schedule. He's not expecting them to go undefeated. And I know someone called in last night and said the same thing about this also. But then the question is, who's beating them? Who's beating Kansas City this year? I mean, you might get San Francisco or Buffalo, Houston, and then you're going to drop a game or two. You shouldn't drop. The Chiefs had a couple of those last year. So the Chiefs are going to lose a couple of games this year. That's going to happen. But in general, the Chiefs are in the driver's seat right now. Even if they lost that game, they would still have the number one seed. And again, it's obviously too early, but listen, let's be honest. Any team that would have the number one spot 5 weeks in, they would definitely be excited about that. So Kansas City right now 5-0 going into the bye week, a much needed bye week for Kansas City. I think what you got to do is find a way to play your best football these next 2 months and try to lock up that number one seed before New Year's. If you can find a way to get that number one seed on Christmas when you go visit the Pittsburgh Steelers, that'd be huge, because you can give Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes and some of the other key players on this team, essentially all your starters, because we know what Andy Reid's going to do if they do have the number one seed locked up. You can give them a couple of weeks rest here. The Week 18 game and also the first round of the playoffs. You'll be off. Now, that's obviously a couple of months away, but that's really how I'm looking at it right now, where you have the bye week early. Again, not ideal, at least when the schedule came out, but right now, certainly ideal. Go get that other bye week. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. And if you can find a way to stay number one in the conference, you prevent everyone else from getting a bye. Everyone else is going to have to duke it out in the wild card. And listen, obviously, having the number one seed does not guarantee you the Super Bowl. We know that based last year with the Chiefs were the 3 seed. They had to go on the road for a couple of playoff games. But if you're Andy Reid with that bye week, and I know he's not undefeated coming off the bye, but he's got a very good track record coming off the bye, you would much rather have that in your arsenal. And we all know about Kansas City hosting 5 straight AFC championship games. Last year, the AFC championship game in Arrowhead on hiatus. So a lot of people thinking at this rate it could go back to Kansas City, considering they've got the number one seed for now. So that's the way things look on Kansas City's side. This is a football team that's played far from perfect football. But you know what I've heard? And this is not just like one or two people. I first heard Andrew Whitworth say this. He said this last week on Rich Eisen's show. And this was before, and maybe it was the week before. He said that he's not concerned about the Kelce and Mahomes connection. I think it was the week before, because that was at the time we had yet to see Mahomes and Kelce, do much. And then next thing you know, Mahomes and Kelce have a solid game against the Chargers and another good game against the Saints on Monday night. But anyway, my point is, Andrew Whitworth said he was not concerned about the lack of connections between Mahomes and Kelce, and that the offense in general is going to pick it up. The one thing he made a note of saying, he said he learned his lesson doubting Kansas City. And I'm hearing a lot of other people say that too when it comes to talk radio, these national media on TV, FS1, ESPN. A lot of people are talking about, well, this Chiefs offense looks beatable, but we said the same thing last year. As long as you have Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce, this unit will figure it out. They'll figure it out. You know it. It may not look pretty in the game. And I think last night, while I was watching, there were a lot of good moments, but there were also some moments where I was really concerned. And like I said, I felt like the Chiefs left some points off the board, and they certainly did. There was a massive 13-point swing with the Colin Saunders interception off Juju's hands, and they go out there, get the touchdown, miss the PAT, but a massive 13-point swing didn't impact the game much. It could have, though. But in general, when I went back and rewatched the game, because like I said, overreactions, they can get the best of you. That's human nature. And when you give it time and go back and watch a game again, you'll notice some differences, and you might have a different mindset on certain things. And my mindset with the offense, they looked great last night. I don't think what were the Saints ranked coming into this week? Let me pull that up real quickly here. Defensively, 17th in total defense, so not the best. 14th against the pass, 7th against the run, 6th in points per game allowed. So, I mean, listen, they had found ways to limit some offenses this season, and the Chiefs were not one of those teams they were able to do that against. Let me actually look something up here. Let me. I just thought of this. Who scored the most points on the Saints this year? Carolina only scored 10. Dallas scored 19. Those were both blowout wins for the Saints. Philadelphia beat the Saints. They scored 15. Last week, Atlanta beat the Saints. They scored 26, and the Chiefs scored 26. So the Saints, who have not been allowing a lot of points this year, they've allowed 26 points for the second week in a row. That's the most they've given up, tied 2 weeks in a row. So Kansas City is going out there doing things to teams that other people are not able to do. I mean, you saw Kirk Cousins. He was held in check against Kansas City. Tampa Bay couldn't do it. I mean, he went out there and threw for more than 500 yards against Tampa Bay. So this Kansas City team overall, offense and defense playing wonderful. I just marvel at the defense, everything they're doing. Offense playing a little above average, I would say. No, the turnover numbers are not pretty, but they're still finding ways to make up for it. And finding ways to score. Might not be pretty, might not be easy at times. It might look very difficult, but they're finding ways. They found ways last year, and I'm sure they'll do it again this year. Listen, 2021 was I thought 2021 was far worse the first half of the season compared to last year, because in 2021, the Chiefs were actually written off by a lot of people at the midway point of the season. They were 3-4. Mahomes led the NFL in interceptions. They turned it around. They won 8 straight games. And I know the season didn't end well in that AFC title game, but what's happened since then? They've won 2 Super Bowls. Looking to do it for 3 years in a row, something never been done in NFL history. This Chiefs team, and I said this on a reel this morning, and I'm sure you guys saw that. If you haven't, go check it out. This Chiefs team does not roll over and quit. They've been down by exactly 10 points in all 3 of the Super Bowls that they won. So if they can do that in those Super Bowls, you know they can find ways to come through even under the most difficult circumstances. This is a team that faced a 24-0 deficit, and they erased that deficit in the span of like 9 minutes. So we know what this team's capable of. This is not a pushover team. This is not a team that just bends over and gives up. What did I say earlier at the beginning of the podcast tonight? This is a Chiefs team that's not feeling sorry for themselves just because they're without their top 2 wide receivers and their top 2 running backs. You know why I know that? Because I paid attention last year when they had a couple of embarrassing losses. Let's start with the Broncos game. That was an embarrassing loss. The Chiefs couldn't get to the end zone, if I recall correctly. Lost by multiple scores in that one. They were getting ready to play the Dolphins in Germany, and when the Chiefs landed in Germany, doing practice and also doing the media obligations, they had smiles all around. It's almost like you could not even tell they had lost the week before, let alone lost to a really bad team. Later in the year, the loss to the Bills. Everyone knows how that one ended. Patrick Mahomes, who knows what he was going to do to the ref, but he looked like he wanted to fight that ref. Then what do you know? You know, as the week went on, when the Chiefs are doing their media availability, when the media is in the locker room, they've got smiles on their faces. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. They're not feeling sorry for themselves because they lost a game they shouldn't have lost. Same thing on Christmas against the Raiders. That was an embarrassing loss for the Chiefs. But they weren't going out there, you know, oh man, lost to the Raiders, our season's over. No, they had a positive attitude. They weren't letting that bring them down. And by the way, what's happened since then? They've won, 11 in a row now? Is that what it is? They're 5-0. Oh, what was it last year? The 4 games, 6. Is it 11 in a row? Man, I should know that by now. Let me quickly check that out. I think Matt McMullen might have that here. 12. Never mind, 12 in a row. Shame on me for not giving them enough credit there. Yeah. Wait, never mind. I misread that. How many games? Okay, bear with me 1 second. Should have had this before, but let's. Okay, they've got 5 this year. How many games did they win last year to end the season? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it is 11 in a row. Never mind. Okay, I had it right the first time. Okay. All right. Live podcasting. What do you know? So anyway, 11 in a row they've won. And all of them have been one possession games except for the wild card game against the Dolphins. You're going to get every team's best shot. There are going to be a lot of one-score games this year for Kansas City. They'll lose a couple of them, I would imagine. And look, doesn't matter if you come off an embarrassing loss or if you're going through the drop issues or injuries, which is the case this year. They're not just going to stand around and say, yep, season's over. They're still going out there playing some big ball. Look at the Dolphins. They're without Tua. Tyreek Hill was meeting with the media, and man, he did not look like he wanted to answer a damn question from the media. And I know they came off a win, but you play the Patriots, for crying out loud. Tyreek Hill does not look like he's having fun. Listen, he's making a lot of money, so boo-hoo, like poor Tyreek Hill. He's making a shit ton of money. But that team, that offense has really regressed even before Tua's injury. So Kansas City, the position they're in right now, I think people are making too big of a deal of the offense thing. I think it's maybe blown a little bit out of proportion because they're still finding ways to move the football and put points on the scoreboard. Defense, I mean, they're doing their thing. They're 5-0 going into the bye week. All right. I know, boy, how many comments are in here right now? There's got to be a bunch. Yeah, let's get right into it. Let's read some comments here. If you guys bear with me here, I'm going to go through all the, if I don't read your comment, there might be some repeat comments. I'm also going to try to skim through as much as I can here. Lauren says this bye week is too soon. Should at least be week 8 at the earliest. Yeah, I mean, listen, you've had that the past few years. You're going to have to deal with having it early at some point, and that just happens to be this year. The Chiefs have had an earlier bye week before. Remember 2006 when the Chiefs had their bye week in week 3? Remember that after the 0-2 start? They played the Bengals in week 1. Trent Green had that concussion, and Damon Heward steps in, and then they play the Broncos in overtime, 9-6. Remember that one? A field goal battle between the Broncos and the Chiefs. And then they dominate the 49ers in week 4 coming off the bye. So that's the earliest the Chiefs have had. I'll say right now, though, Lawrence, I think this is actually the best time to have the bye. I mean, really, like let Kareem Hunt kind of get reacclimated a little bit because I'm sure, might be a little rusty there. He may not look like it. But I think, internally, physically, he may still be dealing with some of that. So I think this bye week may help him a little bit and try to, go through what he needs to go through in these next, essentially in this next week, the team's going to be off for, and try to get his body more in football shape. Hunt is demonstrating he's always been a Chiefs player. I hope he gets that ring. Yeah. This is a really great turnaround story. Listen, I know a lot of people are, and I've gotten a lot of these complaints about announcers mentioning what happened with Kareem Hunt. Listen, guys, let me just say 2 things about that. Number 1, that's part of the story. That is part of the story right now with Kareem Hunt. His redemption story and trying to become a Super Bowl champion because he missed out on this dynasty, that's a big part of the story. And the other thing, too, is, so who announced the game last week for the Chiefs? Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. And then last night was Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Well, who's going to be the next announcing crew? Unless something changes, it is expected to be Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady. So, those guys want to give their 2 cents on the whole Kareem Hunt thing. And then who do the Chiefs play after that? The Raiders. So it's probably going to be Kevin Harlan and Trent Green in that one. And so, again, a new set of announcers. They're going to want to weigh in and share their thoughts on Kareem Hunt's return. And they'll mention what happened. At the end of the day, that is part of the story. I get people not wanting to hear that. But if you're going to talk about, it's almost like Let me give you an example here. I'll use Kobe Bryant as an example. If you're going to tell the complete and honest story about Kobe Bryant, you can't leave out the sexual conduct allegation. And I'm not trying to compare the two things here, but my point is with Kobe Bryant, that was a huge deal with Kobe Bryant. If you're going to talk about the overall history of Kobe Bryant and what he did for the Lakers his entire career, that has to be mentioned because that's a big part. He showed up to games late because of court dates with Kareem Hunt. And, he wants to come out on top here and become a Super Bowl champion. If you ever listen, there's going to be a 30 for 30 and several other documentaries on this Chiefs dynasty. And if you're going to tell the complete and honest story, you have to talk about the Kareem Hunt incident. And if this ends in a three-peat, well, you can finish it off by giving it a happy ending and talking about how Kareem Hunt was able to rebound and make the most of his second chance. So again, I get people not really liking that it's being brought up here. Because I've been getting that comment from a lot of people. Both the Chiefs and Vikings are undefeated going into the bye week. Yeah, that might. Hey, the NFL script. I'm kidding. I know that's not what you were trying to say, Matthew, but I'm sure there's at least one person out there thinking that. 28 points or less for so many games in a row is crazy. Chiefs on a roll. Yeah, this is not an easy thing to do. And again, it's not like you're playing worms. We're including the playoffs here. I mean, didn't the Ravens dominate a bunch of teams last year? They dominated the Dolphins. They dominated the 49ers and a couple of other teams. I mean, they were putting up a lot of points last year. And they only put up 7, or no, I'm sorry, not 17. The Chiefs had 17. They put up 10 against the Chiefs last year in the AFC Championship game, the one game away from the Super Bowl. And then this year they put up just 20, which 20 is not terrible, but still, they went out there and just had a shootout with the Bengals in overtime. See a couple of Carson Steele comments here. John says, are they pushing Carson Steele too hard? They took it easy on Rice his first season. I don't know if they're pushing Carson Steele. I mean, if that was the case, they would have just kept giving him all of these carries. They've kind of had him take a backseat these last couple of games. Because he's had 2 fumbles. I know he had a fumble last night, but I don't really put that on Carson Steele. That's more on Travis Kelce because the play was for Carson Steele to toss it to Xavier Worthy on the trick play, which the Chiefs have been doing that a bit too much. I feel like they're going to make it look obvious at some point. And unfortunately, in this one, Travis Kelce missed a block, and that led to the fumble there. Thank goodness for Xavier Worthy. He picked that ball up pretty quickly. And that was, by the way, when Joe Buck had that infamous second and Overland Park call, which I can't get over that. Second and Overland Park. And then he had another nice zinger where he said it's 3rd and 7 index cards. Like he had to have been saving those for quite some time. Mitch Holtis had a really epic call on Isaiah Likely's toe being out of bounds, saying he forgot to clip his toenail. He had all sorts of one-liners. He just kept dropping immediately one after one. It's like Mitch Holtis had been waiting a long time to be using those, 100%. I'm sure Joe Buck had been waiting for years to say second and Overland Park. I mean, he had to. Somebody mentioned that he's really good friends with Paul Rudd. I believe he's also really got a good connection with Rob Riggle as well. So that may be where he got the Overland Park from. Probably was dared to do it by those big slick guys. Listen, Spags he's been a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and we had Damon Heward on the podcast recently, and Damon Heward he got a little familiar with Spags because they were both on the same team in NFL Europe with the Frankfurt Galaxy in 1997. Obviously, a lot has changed since then, but Damon made it clear. I mean, he's not surprised to see Spags have the success he's having because of what he saw going up against Spags in practice. And obviously you saw Spags and what he did for New York. Unfortunately, his head coaching run just didn't work out in St. Louis. But then he comes to Kansas City eventually. And this guy, I mean, what he's doing defensively. And listen, I think Romeo Crennel, a former Chiefs defensive coordinator, and also Dick LeBeau, a phenomenal defensive-minded coach for Pittsburgh for a long time. I think those two guys have always been, in my mind, have been considered some of the best defensive coordinators in NFL history, Spags has to be in that conversation now. 1,000% has got to be in that conversation now. 5-0 for the 5th time in franchise history. Okay, I'm going to try to recall all the times. Matthew, fact check me here. Okay, so 5 times they've been 5-0. 2024. When did the Raiders beat the Chiefs in 2020? Okay, I'm going to come back to 2020. 2017, they started 5-0. I remember that because then they lost like 4 or 5 in a row, and it got a little weird at one point. Or maybe they started 6-0. I can't remember. But 2017. Let's see. I want to say 2018, but when did the Chiefs and Patriots play? Okay, so 2024, 2017, I can say for a fact. 2013, 2003. What was the other year they started 5-0? I don't know. You guys help me out on this one. What was the other year? Yeah, I mean, Juju, I'm glad he's back. I was really bummed out when he went to New England. I was like, man, on a 3-year deal. And I thought, okay, he's not coming back anytime soon. Nope. He's back. Got a reunion going on this season in Kansas City. Jody Fortson, Juju, Kareem Hunt. When he doesn't fumble, he looks great. Cut him some slack. He is a rookie starting with the Stars. And listen, I think, preseason hype is preseason hype. That doesn't always carry over. He's looked good when carrying the football. I do agree with you, Robert. But got to be better about the ball security for sure. That's put the Chiefs in a bit of a bind in a couple of games this year. Oh, I agree with you 100%, Teresa. What were the Chiefs last night? 2 of 7? That's not very good. That is not very good. If I can pull that up, that was not very good at all. What are the Chiefs in the red zone this year? Yeah, 2 of 7. This year, where did the Chiefs rank? It's got to be really low. Yeah, they are the 3rd worst red zone offense in the NFL. That needs to improve. What were they last year? Because we saw Harrison Butker a lot last year. Kansas City was 19th in that category. Okay, better than I expected. How about the last 3 games? Baltimore's been really good in the red zone the last 3 games. Yeah, Kansas City's still bottom 3 last 3 games. Okay, yeah, they've got to improve on that. They've got to be much better. 7 red zone opportunities. I mean, come on, like moving the football is never easy in the NFL. And when you get there 7 times and only score 2 touchdowns, you gotta make up for that. Got to be better. Yeah, the Jawan Taylor thing is so weird, man. Like, he's had a full off season. He's been around the team long enough now. It's like, dude, you got to go. You got to go. Worthy is doing good considering he doesn't even know the playbook yet. No, at least not completely. I feel like opposing teams are really trying to hurt our receivers. No, listen, I don't think that's the case, but they're going to play Kansas City hard. I mean, especially a guy like Worthy, who is very small. Look, I remember Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce has done this a lot in his career. Those guys would run out of bounds a lot once they catch the ball and they see defenders coming in. People might say, oh, wimp. Okay. I call it smart football. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do, especially when Tyreek Hill is as small as he is. What are your thoughts on Hardman, and should he be getting more of a role in this offense? I'd like that. I've been expecting that from Hardman for quite some time. I've said this so much with Mecole Hardman. This is a guy who is a very talented football player. He's one of the fastest players in the NFL right now. He may not be Xavier Worthy and Tyreek Hill type of fast or Hollywood Brown type of fast, but he's not too far behind those guys. This guy can really do damage to a defense, and we've seen it in years past, both on offense and on special teams. But the problem with McCole Hardman is the ball security is such an issue with him sometimes. We saw it in a punt return against the Broncos last year. We saw it in the Buffalo playoff game where he fumbled twice at the one of them going for a touchback. It's like, man, and by the way, to finish answering this question, I want Hardman to get more involved. Yes, I hope so, Lego my ego. But my thing with Hardman is like he's been so inconsistent and his progress has been slow in the NFL. It's a little hard to trust him on this. So I don't know. I struggle with that so much. But then it's like, what is he? He's 26 years old. He's not very old. McCole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster are not very old, you guys. McCole Hardman, what's his age? He turned 26 in March. Juju age, he turns 28 in November. That's not necessarily old. I mean, it's not young in NFL standards, but that's not really old either. And a guy like McCole Hardman, and I said this when he was a free agent because he did sign a little late. I mean, you have every reason to want to give McCole Hardman another chance. And maybe emotionally that's easy to say because he was the walk-off guy in overtime for the Super Bowl. But the guy's talent is there. I still remember his rookie season when Tyreek Hill got injured. And so he had to step in and play more games. That kid was ripping up defensive backs, torching them in the end zone. And he was doing it for a couple of years. And I feel like we're seeing it less and less with Hardman. I want to see more of McCole Hardman on offense because he can do a lot of good things for your team. We just haven't seen a lot of that with him. So if there was ever a time for him to get another opportunity, now's the time because you're not getting Hollywood and Rice back anytime soon. So, or maybe at all this year. So if there was ever a chance to do it and to prove that the team does not need to go out there and get anybody, this is it. Too many tight ends on the field. Yeah. I mean, that 13-14 personnel package, we might be seeing more of that. We might see more of that this year. And I've got no issues with it because I kind of wondered with all of these injuries, what if the Chiefs turn into a run first team? That's not to say they'll never pass. I kind of said that. I said yesterday before the game, with the personnel that was available, I said, the Chiefs are going to go run heavy. And I got a comment on Twitter, someone saying, well, they're still going to pass. Well, yeah, no shit, they're going to pass. Just because you go run heavy doesn't mean you don't ever pass. There's a difference between run heavy and run only. A huge difference. I don't care if you are a tight end or a wide receiver. If you can catch, you play. That must be in... What other team has better tight ends than the Chiefs? Oh, I would agree, Gwen. I think Noah Gray is far better than a lot of people give him credit for. And I'm glad the Chiefs kept him and locked him up to a long-term deal. Travis did that lateral on his own. Did you see Patrick talking about it? Yeah, he said that it's almost like because he told Travis, hey, let's get a first down on this drive because it was 2nd and 34 or 2nd and Overland Park, as Joe Buck likes to put it. And then Kelsey went out there, did his thing, and they got the first down on that drive, going for it on 4th down, which I thought was a right call. And Mahomes said, it's almost like I'm talking to Sterling. It's like, oh, that's funny. That was a good one-liner there. Yeah, a lot of people talking about their frustration with Jawan Taylor. Man, again, I can be very patient with a football player, but we've seen it long enough. Like, you gotta go, dude. You gotta go. I may have a crush on Spags, Gwen says. I think I got like I think everyone wants to be, I think there are some bro crushes on Spags. I think everyone loves Spags right now. Oh, man. Listen, I still remember when there was the Chiefs were looking for a DC. My wish list was Rex Ryan. Come out of the ESPN desk and come join Kansas City. Because he had worked with Andy Reid, I think, at one point. But no. Boy, Spags really has turned things around. Yeah, and as far as defensive scheme goes, I'm personally more of a fan of the 3-4 than the 4-3. But man, Spags is just making it look very easy in the 4-3 scheme. And listen, I know that number 3-4 and 4-3 really does get. I mean, it's not limited to the 4-3. You obviously change things up there, but it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch for sure. And I know there's been some talk out there about the linebacker position not being the same as it once was. You look at Kansas City, man, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, they've been playing better than they did the first couple of weeks. Leo Chenal, we haven't really heard much from him compared to the first couple of games where he was really picking up the slack for the linebackers. The linebackers have been great this year for Kansas City. I would argue that is probably the best position group for Kansas City this year, for sure. Wish McDuffie would get an interception. Everybody shits on him because he doesn't have an interception. Really? I'm not seeing this, Brandon. I mean, your social media circulation must be different than mine because I am not seeing this. I think there are a lot of people wishing for him to get an interception and get involved statistically. I certainly am. The dude's been an all-pro, and he's yet to get an interception in his career. How many defensive backs have been able to do that in the NFL? That's how fucking good Trent McDuffie is. I think in a weird way, I hope he doesn't get any interceptions because it will be easier to sign him long term. Listen, I'm being facetious, but I mean, this guy, regardless, he's not going to be easy to keep when it comes to extending him. I hate the defense games, but we are still putting up in the 20s exciting defense games. Who would think it would be good football? Listen, let me make a comparison here to MMA because in MMA, obviously, when you watch a sport like MMA, UFC, you want to see guys, keep punching each other. You want to see the knockouts and all that stuff. But there are a couple of MMA fighters who are phenomenal wrestlers, and those who do that, guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov before he retired, Kamaru Usman at his peak, they would use wrestling, and Tyron Woodley's done this too. Tyron Woodley, a former Mizzou Tiger, they would use wrestling to slow down their opponent and not let them use a lot of offense. That's what the Chiefs are doing. And they kind of do make it look exciting with the blitz because listen, my favorite play, I mean, touchdowns are great and all, but my favorite play in football is seeing a sack. I go insane when the Chiefs get a sack. So when the Chiefs can go out there and do that kind of thing, it always gets me very excited. And the Chiefs do that often. I know this year that sack total might not be as high, but this is a Chiefs defense that's been limiting running backs, not letting the passing game go off every single game. And they've made it look fun. The blitz is always fun to watch, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm seeing some of you guys, talk about which drop a game they shouldn't drop. Yeah. Texans will be a handful. I don't disagree. Even with they lost Nico Collins for a bit, and they again a team that's been dealing with a little bit of injuries with key players, not as bad as Kansas City's, but they're still finding ways to make it work. Yeah, I think it's gonna be Kansas City and Houston in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a happy ending for Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. I don't think so. Hope you guys all picked up on that one. Baker versus Mahomes goes way back to them in the Big 12. Yeah, when Baker was, both at Texas Tech at one point, if I recall. Yeah. So I'm excited to see that. That's going to be a nice Monday Night Football matchup. The primetime games, like, why are we playing so many NFC teams on primetime? I mean, unless Tom Brady was still there, and I get the Baker Mahomes thing. Okay, that could be, it'll be brought up by ESPN before the game and during the game, but it's like, man, give me the Raiders on Monday night. Give me the Bengals or the Bills. I mean, you got the Ravens on primetime, but I don't want to play these NFC South teams on primetime. But no, well, I mean, that's what they gave us. Yeah, he is done for the year, Mickey. Unfortunately, he's done for the year. We learned that today. But the injury not as bad as they initially thought. So, as far as recovery goes, it's gonna be a much easier process than it would be if it was a torn ACL. If it was a torn ACL, we would have to question his availability early on, which there's a very good chance he's going to get suspended to open up the 2025 season anyway. So if it was a torn ACL, he could maybe use those extra weeks during the suspension to continue to recover. Now it's like, okay, it's an LCL injury, so he can come back, go through the suspension, spend more time recovering and getting ready, and come back ready to go midway whenever that suspension is going to be up, which we won't know anytime soon. Yeah, it was really cool to see those guys. Colin Sanders, he had that nice run in the 40. So I think if anyone had seen that, they know that's not a surprise at all. Yeah, I get that, Nick. But you know what, man? You got to take the points because we've seen it so many times when teams forego the field goal because they feel like they need touchdowns, and if they went for more field goals, that would have prevented overtime. You know what it reminds me of is last year against the Bengals, where the Chiefs started the winning streak. The Chiefs had a touchdown, I think, on the first drive they had, the first possession. So they were it was 7-3 or whatever the score was. And then after that, the Chiefs did not score a touchdown the rest of the way, but they kicked 6 field goals with Harrison Butker. You got to kick field goals. I mean, if you're at the 1 or the 2, fine, go for it, because your defense might be able to come away with a safety. You got to always give it a try. And with the Chiefs, they always just relied on Harrison Butker, who was automatic last year. Only missed 2 kicks all of last year. He's had a couple of misses this year, and they've all been from like long range, so I'm not too concerned about that. He had a PAT miss, his first PAT miss in since 2022. And that was when he was dealing with an ankle injury. So it's like, that's going to happen. He's overall just been very consistent for the Chiefs. Yeah, to an extent. It'd be nice if that wasn't always the case. No, Willie Gay was not playing, but he was there. He was at Arrowhead. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see Colin Sanders, Tyrann Mathieu, Willie Gay after the game and just chatting it up with those guys. And listen, it just shows you, man, like, listen, a lot of times you see guys, they'll just shake hands and say a few words and move on. Chris Jones, he was sticking around at midfield talking to those guys. Like, there's a really positive culture. It kind of reminds me of the Royals in 2014 and 2015, man. Those guys were just so close together. And it's so easy to have that kind of culture when you are a championship team. That always helps team camaraderie. That always helps the chemistry on a team. And the Chiefs have always had that. Even when these guys leave, they're always... Listen, when Kareem Hunt left, him and Travis Kelce, of course, an Ohio guy, and so is Kareem Hunt, they were at some charity softball event, and those guys were spotted just hanging out, chopping it up, having fun. I mean, these guys, they establish a really strong bond with one another. So even when the guys who leave, I mean, they keep in touch. I think the word got out from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think anyone knew this, that Kareem Hunt was at Patrick Mahomes' wedding. This was well after Kareem Hunt was let go by the Chiefs. So these guys have kept in touch over the years. Look at it like this. If the Bengals lost Jamar Chase for the season, all of their losses would be blamed on him being hurt. Well, I'm going to take that comment and actually go a little further with this, Timothy, because I saw Cincinnati fans blaming their first couple of losses on not having T. Higgins the first couple of games. And T. Higgins is a phenomenal receiver. But it's like, look, you can't just use that as excuse. If anything, I think Cincinnati of all teams can't use that as an excuse, because didn't they almost make the playoffs without Joe Burrow? Everyone, even their own fan base, wrote off their team when Jake Browning was a quarterback. Next man up, though. Yep. Teresa said it. Next man up. Violence for Tyreek Hill. Yeah, poor Tyreek Hill. He's making what, $30 million a year? Poor him. Yeah, I saw the headline. I've yet to read the whole story. Dude, what happened with that Yankees player who's like, yeah, they got lucky? It's like their pitcher. And I know in like the NFL, when you score a touchdown, you celebrate. When you get a sack, you celebrate. You make a big play, you celebrate. But in baseball, it's just such a different dynamic where, okay, you get a strikeout very early, literally the first inning. You don't celebrate that. And their pitcher was like flexing after every strikeout. It's like, dude, it's the first inning. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Oh, are people in the chat comparing Ray Rice to Kareem Hunt? Listen, what Kareem Hunt did was bad and wrong. I still remember the very first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, this is not a good look. Like Kareem Hunt shoved his own friend aggressively into that girl. And that was not a good look. Rice, on the other hand, Ray Rice, that is, I think I said Rashi Rice. I apologize. Ray Rice, on the other hand, dude, he beat the shit out of his wife. Like that was bad. And the Ravens were like, dude, you got to go. We can't keep you around. And listen, I don't like to compare these kinds of things. I just don't. But if that's what's going on in the chat, I mean, come on. Mahomes is going to be at the Royals game tomorrow night. The K needs to be loud, sold out. Let's go. Yeah, on his bye week. Let's go. I think we're going to see a lot of Chiefs in attendance. I hope so. Hopefully there's like a whole suite decked out just for the Chiefs players. John says, I don't like being undefeated too long. A loss builds a stronger team. Don't want your first loss in the playoffs. You know what's interesting is I've kind of contemplated this because when Hollywood and Rice were healthy prior to their injuries, there were some fans on social media throwing the idea around of an undefeated season. And I'm like, I don't know. I get nervous with an undefeated season. First of all, I know they played much fewer games back then. But the undefeated thing has been done already. I know the Patriots were really going for it. They were playing all their starters, all 16 games back when it was 16 games. I get that. First of all, the Chiefs are going to drop a few games. They will. But let's say they don't. I just don't like the idea of being undefeated going into the playoffs. Kind of like your mindset, John. It's like, I think there might even be some overconfidence that goes with that. Wouldn't you guys agree when the Patriots were undefeated going into the Super Bowl? Don't you think there was a lot of overconfidence in that one? Because Brady was laughing when he heard what Plaxico Burress's prediction was. And Brady's like, oh, we're only going to score 14 points. Well, you ended up scoring less than that, Brady. And on 4th and 15, they went to Randy Moss in the end zone, overthrowing him. It's like, this team looks way too overconfident for a championship game. I mean, that's just my thought. Anyone shocked about the Robert Saleh fire? Okay, let me get into this because I've yet to weigh in on this. Do I think Robert Saleh is a great head coach? No. Far from it. I think he was a phenomenal defensive coordinator in San Francisco. I liked what he did there in San Francisco. Yeah, but I think with the Jets, he had room to improve for sure. Here's the problem with the Jets: they went all in on Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers wanted to get all of his former Packer teammates in New York to the point where like. It just felt like Aaron Rodgers was running that organization. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, so apparently Aaron Rodgers came in not knowing that he got fired before it became public news for everyone else to learn about. He was shocked about the whole thing. I call bullshit, like a lot of other people. But the problem here is, I don't like when players have too much control. Or any control of these things. If a player has influence, like Patrick Mahomes, for instance, there's a lot of talk that Matt Nagy had influence on getting Juju Smith-Schuster. Well, Matt Nagy, when he was on the team in 2022, was a quarterback's coach. What does that tell you? Mahomes probably had something to say about that. That kind of thing is fine. But I don't like when athletes have some kind of control. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes, LeBron James, Tom Brady. Top tier athletes like those players I just mentioned should never have control. You be the player, let the general manager be the general manager. I've never been a big fan of that. I get Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic football player. 4 MVPs, should maybe have more Super Bowl championships under his belt, but he has at least one. I don't like that New York is just giving him the key and letting him operate the whole thing because they're essentially doing what he wants. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think Davante Adams wants to go there. Oh, by the way, speaking of Robert Saleh, I just got notified that Kyle Shanahan apparently has reached out trying to get his old DC back. Hey, that's a great idea. They could use him. I definitely think they could use him. But as far as the Robert Saleh thing goes, listen, I don't think Robert Saleh is not a great coach, but he was not the problem. Did you not see that game in London? Rodgers just threw pick after pick when the Jets defense was giving their team every opportunity to come back against an undefeated team. And Rodgers is going out there underthrowing his receiver. It gets picked off, and then he wants to go cry to the referees about it. Like, come on, dude. This is not on Robert Saleh. This is not on Robert Saleh. Aaron Rodgers 100% had a big say in this. And there's another report out there that Saleh was evidently going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. And if you guys have been paying attention, Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, they're boys. When Broncos head coach Sean Payton, when he basically buried Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers came to his defense. He was not happy about those comments. Aaron Rodgers had a lot to say to Sean Payton. And again, apparently Saleh was going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. Well, Aaron Rodgers showed up with an Uno reverse card and was like, nope, you are not firing my boy. We're firing you. That's what happened. By the way, here's the other thing. There's another report out there that Saleh was never allowed to address the team and security escorted him out. Now, I'm sure they let him pack his things and then leave. Maybe they did, maybe not. That is a really shitty thing to do. Like, I get it. You fire him. He's no longer on the team. But let him address the players. And you know, the owners can be there in the room, but let him just say goodbye. Like, let him know what happened. Let him apologize if he needs to and take responsibility, all these things. You know, I've always wondered this. I need to reach out to some of the players who I've talked to in the past and just kind of get their input on this. Because I'm really curious what it's like for a player when they find out someone gets fired. Obviously, we have not had that in Kansas City in a long time. But I've always wondered what it's like for an NFL team or even a college football team. What is the reaction when someone gets fired? But those are my thoughts on the whole Robert Saleh thing. That's a crazy matter. Which team do you think will trade for Davante Adams? I'm still hearing the media hype up the Chiefs as like a potential possibility. I don't know why, but people are still doing that. Who do I think will get Davante Adams? I don't think it's going to be the Jets. I don't think it's going to be the Saints anymore. I don't think he wants to go there, given Derek Carr's recent injury. Maybe San Francisco. I think San Francisco could honestly be that team that gets Davante Adams. Maybe one out of left field, but I think that's where he could go. Just think the Chiefs could have picked DK Metcalf, but picked Hardman instead. Okay, but Chris, at the same time, there are 10 other teams that could have drafted Patrick Mahomes. Like, I hear this a lot from people, and you're not the only one that said this exact same thing, Chris, but the Cincinnati Bengals, they picked one spot before number 10. Keep in mind, number 10 was originally owned by the Bills. Who did the Bengals take at number 9? John Ross, who is considered one of the biggest wide receiver busts in NFL history. He even tried out for the Chiefs last year, and that didn't even, I don't even think he made it to training camp. So listen, we can play this game all day. You know who else could have been taken in 2 different rounds, but never was taken in those first 2 rounds? Travis Kelce. So we can go back and go through, you know, who could have been drafted, who could have been here and there. Every team's going to have misses. And by the way, there were reasons to pass on DK Metcalf. A lot of teams passed on DK Metcalf because of his issues character-wise in college. So, you know, not justifying DK over Hardman, or excuse me, Hardman over DK. But let's also remember something here. Again, I get the play call is more pertinent than the receiver. But didn't Hardman catch the game-winning touchdown? Doesn't Hardman have 3 rings? I think DK would love to trade that. His personal success for 3 rings. Not to say, he wants to be a bad player, but I think you got to understand, listen, there are a lot of players the Chiefs could have drafted or even brought in free. The Chiefs could have brought in DeAndre Hopkins last year. That would have been huge for Kansas City. Chiefs still won the Super Bowl without him. They traded Tyreek Hill, and they've won the Super Bowl every year without him. Yeah, I agree with you. He is heavily underrated, in my opinion. I think Kansas City fans really do appreciate him, though. I really do. I really do think that. I'm just reading some of your guys' comments here. I'm just reading as many comments as I can because we're not going to do a Red Friday live chat this week. In fact, we're not going to be doing any podcasts unless something big happens with the Chiefs. I'll come back, but I'm going to take a break from live streams and podcasts until next Monday. Definitely could use the Chiefs Zone is going on a bye week, just like the team. It doesn't tell me who you guys are replying to. I can tell certain comments are in response to other people, but it doesn't show who on my end. Aaron Rodgers, the GM, yeah. Boy, you guys are lashing out on Aaron Rodgers. There are not a lot of Aaron Rodgers fans here. Taryn says it is the Jets. Yeah, I get it. This is the thing. I thought about this too. Which 2 franchises do I feel like have been the most dysfunctional franchises the past 15 years, let's say? 15, 20 years? I would have to say the Jets and the Raiders. They keep going through all this turnover with coaches and personnel. There's a reason why they're not going to go as far as people want them to, because they keep going through all these changes over and over and over and over again. Buffalo may just embarrass the Jets Monday. Yeah, when I heard that the Jets' next game was on Monday night against the Bills, I was like, oh boy. Your first game is on primetime with your interim head coach. You better pull off a Romeo Crennel when he had his first game as an interim head coach of the Chiefs. Remember that? They dethroned the undefeated Packers. Coincidentally, Aaron Rodgers was on that team there. And we're talking about him in this situation here. Yeah, he was the fall man, Kirk. Yeah, you're right. Listen, I think coaches, they do deserve a lot of the blame and a lot of the responsibility when things go wrong, and when things go right, I think they do deserve a lot of praise. But I don't think the struggles in New York are not all on Robert Saleh. I can't agree with that. I just can't. And by the way, I didn't mention this part. You're 2-3. Like, look at the AFC standings. Let me just look at the AFC standings real quickly, just to remind myself so I don't get it wrong. So if the season ended today, hypothetically, your 7 playoff teams in the AFC are the Chiefs, the Texans, Ravens, Bills, Steelers, Broncos, and Chargers. Those are your 7 teams. You want to know who's right behind the Chargers? The Jets. Why are you firing your head coach when you're 1 game behind a playoff spot? And again, I get it's week 5, so going into week 6 now, but you're 2-3. It's not like you're 0-5 or 1-4. I mean, I would argue like the Raiders are also 2-3, and Raiders fans want AP fired. There are a lot of Bengals fans that want Zach Taylor fired, and probably a valid reason to have him fired. I mean, I would have guessed those guys before Robert Saleh. This was a huge surprise to me. Maybe. I mean, it's so hard to say, Kyle. Maybe in free agency. I just can't. I just don't think the Chiefs are going to do any trades. If the Chiefs are going to go out there and make a trade for someone, even Amari Cooper, they would need to free up some cap space. It's not going to be very easy to do. I don't think the Chiefs are going to go out there and go make a move in a trade. Maybe free agency I can see. Trade-wise, I don't see it. I just don't. And by the way, I was watching the breakdown, LaShawn McCoy's show on FS1, and LaShawn McCoy, who obviously is a former Chief, he shared a conversation. He said he spoke to Brett Veach, and he asked Brett Veach if they're planning on going to get Davante Adams or another receiver, and Veach apparently told McCoy no, and McCoy shared that he asked Veach why not, and Veach apparently gave the answer that that's what a lot of people wanted last year, and they didn't do it. They stuck with it and won a Super Bowl. Take that for what it's worth to you, but figured you might want to know that little nugget there. It's on his show. Check out the archives on their YouTube page. FS1 and ESPN's gotten better about it, but those shows do a really good job of putting the highlights on their YouTube pages and on their social media sites. I don't see anyone trading with us without making us overpay. I don't disagree with this, Timothy. And this is why I was really shocked that the Bills of all teams dealt with the Chiefs in the draft. But it's like, unless you're a team like the Panthers or the Browns, who are awful right now, and they couldn't care less who wins the Super Bowl, those teams might be willing to be like, okay, give us your best offer and we'll give you this player that you want. But if it's going to be the Raiders, like Davante Adams, he'd be awesome in Kansas City, no question about it. But I mean, the Raiders are going to ask, you're going to have to give up an arm and a leg for Davante Adams if you're Kansas City. Maybe they ship him out to the Chargers or the Broncos for a lesser price, but if it's Kansas City, man, it's like, look, they might strengthen this dynasty and maybe even allow you to potentially four-peat. I don't know what you refer to that, four-peat, which I don't see happening, but it's like, man, they're not gonna make it cheap for sure. No Rice, no Hollywood, no Pacheco for the season. We need something. Pacheco will come back, but as far as wide receivers go, yeah, they're going to need to try to get something. Yeah, Thielen's on the Panthers, right? Quad Pete. See, that doesn't sound cool. What sounds cooler, Quad Pete or Four Pete? Four Pete sounds cooler, but I guess Quad Pete. As far as the English goes. That sounds more correct. Yeah, Thielen, he had some good years in Minnesota. The Panthers, I know they kind of thought they had something going with Andy Dalton. I was like, listen, fucking Raiders, okay? Everyone can beat the Raiders. Everyone can beat the Panthers. Come on. Yeah, I assume Thielen would be a guy that's available. Let me just check his Adam Thielen. He is what's his salary cap hit? It is 9.9. He has a cap hit of $9.9 million, base salary $5.5 million. Yeah, that's not happening. That is not happening. And again, I hear all these shows and I get, like, if you work for ESPN or FS1, it's hard to cover all 32 teams. And then you're also commenting about basketball and baseball and college sports. But the amount of like if you're going to say, hey, the Chiefs should go get this receiver, well, at least do research on the salary cap, because that is a big factor as to why the Chiefs are not making any moves right now. How many weeks before Raiders are coachless? Dude, the Raiders are not going to fire anyone. I know Raiders fans want a change. And I said this last in the offseason. I said, look, Raiders fans are not going to be very patient. The same Raiders fans that are thrilled for AP and saying that Pierce is going to turn things around are the same ones who are going to want him fired pretty quickly. I was not expecting it after 5 games, but here we are. So I don't know, man. It's like you got to give somebody with the Raiders at least 3 years. I mean, listen, I'm not one to give the Raiders suggestions on how to improve. You guys know me, but you got to give someone a fair shake here. And they're really not. What they should have done is promote Rich Bisaccia. That was stupid. They went with Josh freaking McDaniels. And listen, I think Josh McDaniels deserved a second chance. I think Robert Saleh deserves a second chance in the future. But over Rich Bisaccia, that was a massive fumble by the Raiders. 100%. And I'm surprised Bisaccia is not a head coach somewhere. Like, did people not see what he did as an interim head coach, considering all the drama that year? But what do I know? I'm just a podcaster behind this computer, in front of this camera, in front of this microphone. That's all. Yeah, Cooper's really the only affordable guy. But even then, it's like you still got to make sure you don't just spend all that money. You still need some of it for the remainder of free agency too, because other injuries could come up. Yeah, I've said this too, Gwen. Unless the Chiefs can restructure a contract, I don't see them going after anybody in a trade. Tony, no. I've seen a few people suggest that too, Kirk, but no, thank you. Last year was good enough. That was good enough, man. That was good enough. They should have kept Rich Bisaccia. Yeah, I'm with you. Hunter Renfrow, yeah, he's out there. Renfrow, Thomas, Julio Jones. How many weeks till the Browns fire their coach or put Winston in a... Sorry, if they fire Kevin Stefanski, I'd be shocked. Hasn't he been coach of the year twice? I don't know. I mean, I just think they got to move on from Deshaun Watson. I don't think that's the guy. He was at one point. Not anymore, though. Not anymore. Oh, similar. Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, they did that last year with Hardman. Didn't make a big difference in his overall body of work, but he did have the game winner in the overtime of the Super Bowl. So, yeah, we'll see. Like I said, no podcast until next Monday, unless the Chiefs do make a big move. That's when we'll break that little rule there, come out of our vacation and hiatus and do the podcast. All right. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. Big thanks to all of you for joining me for this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Hey, thank you all. This has been a great first 5 weeks of the football season. It's obviously a lot more fun when they're winning, but hey, even when they're losing, it's always fun to still talk Chiefs football and NFL with you guys. So thank you all for joining me for this live stream on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Spread the word about the Chiefs Zone podcast. Share the links. That always really helps out. So please continue to spread the word. I know you guys have been doing it, sharing this live stream, even though we're wrapping up, sharing it, because there are a lot of people who watch after the live stream. They watch the archive version of it, a lot of people. So that really helps out this podcast. So I appreciate those who have been doing all of that. Again, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. If you miss any part of the live stream, you want to go back and listen to the audio version, you can do that as well. Yes, go Royals. Let's air horns for the Royals. Let's do that real quickly. I have not used those air horns in a while, so had to drop that in there. Don't forget, we do have the giveaway on X and Instagram. So if you haven't checked my pinned post, we have a rolling cooler giveaway. I've been a little lazy with the giveaways lately, so I'm going to try to be more consistent with that. We got a lot more giveaways coming up real soon, things we have not given away before. So make sure you guys keep it locked and pay attention to all of that. If you're not on X and Instagram, hey, sign up. It's really quick. It's really easy to do, and you get yourself a chance to win a giveaway there. So make sure you guys pay attention to all of that. All right, guys, my name is Farzin Vousoughian. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast, and thank you for watching live. For those of you who did, I'm out. I will talk to you all on Monday. Take care.